Hi everyone, for today's podcast, I'm going to be touching on the topic of mental health stigma and how it prevents today's youth from seeking help through treatment. Just to preface, I really cannot stress enough how important this topic is, especially to the American nation since the start of the COVID pandemic specifically. Mental health affects nearly every teen around the world today, and not only has it affected me personally, but also my family. So, to get started, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, youth mental health challenges and the need for seeking out mental health treatment is at an alarming high. For example, from an article reporting on recent youth mental health issues titled Children's Mental Health is in Crisis, statistics from the year the pandemic started show that from March 2020 to October 2020, mental health-related emergency visits increased by 24%, for youth ages 5 to 11, and from ages 12 to 17, visits increased by 31%. So obviously we can see that this is a drastic increase from recent years, most likely due to the isolation from having to stay inside during quarantine for months and strictly relying on social media for communication, which is obviously good for no one, especially the underdeveloped youth and their underdeveloped brain. So just the negativity that is stemming off from social media is going to affect them mentally because it's just constant berating of negativity, and it warps their brain. It really does. And now it's obviously starting to prevail even more evidently throughout statistical evidence from the entire United States that children are really, really seeing a negative impact from the pandemic and the isolation and the use of technology to a extreme extent. So, continuing from a scholarly article titled Evaluation of a Social Media Campaign on Youth Mental Health Stigma and Help Seeking, a research study was conducted in order to find out more about the correlation between how mental health stigma affects health-seeking behavior, specifically for youth of color. A campaign titled Look Around involved the use of social media influences such as movie theater advertisements, web-based advertising, and school-based media in order to reduce mental health stigma for 6th to 12th grade youth in a Midwestern county of the United States. Through the submission of a survey post-campaign, 11,478 6th to 12th graders reported that there was a significant reduction in self-attributed stigma around seeking out for mental health treatment. Although the results sadly did not let us see that youth of color showed any less of a change compared to the white youth, so the white youth benefited more from this, which is unfair, obviously. So the high school youth population typically struggles with mental health the most, which is seen throughout this research study and others that are going to be in this podcast. But that does not mean that college-age students don't have their own challenges. Obviously, they do. Since college students are more grown and developed, they most likely will handle their challenges differently, though, typically in a better manner, but that is not always the case. But struggling is inherently overwhelming and must be treated for all ages. Another research study was conducted by Nicole Loretto of Walden University. The main point of this study was to express how the main group that does not seek out for help when it comes to struggling with mental health is the youth population. In this particular study, the health belief model was used in order to understand how college-age students perceive the pipeline of struggling with mental health and seeking out treatment for it. These college students were subjected to spending time in mental health literacy programs and reported their feedback. Conclusively, the students who participated in the short-term mental health literacy program saw a result in less self-attributed stigma, but no change in reaching out for mental health treatment. So first, in order to really grasp this, we need to define mental health literacy because not a lot of people know what that is. So a direct quote from Cambridge University Press defines mental health literacy as consisting of several components, including A, the ability to recognize specific disorders or different types of psychological distress, B, knowledge and beliefs about risk factors and causes, C, knowledge and beliefs about self-help interventions, D, knowledge and belief about professional health. E, attitudes which facilitate recognition and appropriate health seeking. And F, knowledge of how to seek mental health information. So overall, we can see from the study that those college-age students should have access to a more long-term and comprehensive mental health literacy program in order to prolong the positive effects from it. So when talking about struggling youth, we of course must speak on how to help these young people, because the world cannot just sit idly by as this happens. So a New York Times article informs parents and guardians, as well as adults in general, on how to help these teens. So the guardians must look for signs of depression, anxiety, and possibly even self-harm in teenagers. In order to do that, the guardian needs to be alert about a change in behavior, disinterest in participating in activities, and a change in eating habits. So another way to help is to start discussions with that adolescent about seeking professional help, and such as counseling. If the youth is specifically struggling with self-harm, removing harmful objects from the home can be a good place for intervention, like a primary intervention, but also using meditative breathing techniques, going for walks, keeping a journal, and even just recommending calling a friend could really help the youth when they find themselves struggling in that very moment. So in an excerpt from an article provided by the Columbus Recovery Center, it is evident that mental health stigma prevalent in youth is a growing and dangerous issue in the U.S. It was reported that each year in America, 1 in 5 teens aged 13 to 18 experience some form of mental health condition. Also, alongside those statistics, 50% of chronic mental health illnesses develop by age 14. So that is an extremely, extremely scary number, because this lets parents and guardians know that they must catch the warning signs early in order to prevent a potential lifelong condition. So the ways in which to help the youth that this article exclaims are to objectively know the warning signs, educate oneself on mental illness, talk about it openly so that the adolescent isn't afraid to reach out, and most importantly, be supportive without enabling the youth. Allowing the youth to be listened to and reassuring them that they are loved without using dismissive or unintentionally hurtful language is key to creating a healthy relationship and in reducing mental health stigma, especially in the household. To make it even more clear, if it hasn't been already, mental health struggles in youth needs to be addressed as soon as the signs prevail. An article from the Washington Post provides more insight on how adults or the parents and guardians of the struggling youth can provide some sort of comfort and relief for the teen. The source says to rely on research-based approaches, something with evidence to back it up. An example of this would be having the crisis hotlines on speed dial, or if in a more extreme case, research mental health facilities, or make an appointment with a pediatrician to discuss medication options. So another important factor when trying to help a struggling teen is to not overwhelm them with questions and solutions to their imminent issues, since there's never an immediate solution to something that seems like the end of the world to them. So it is very important to set attainable goals that the youth can reach in a reasonable amount of time without having to rush them or stress them out even more. To conclude this podcast on a more personal and lighthearted level, I'm now going to be talking about a mental health struggle that has affected someone very close to me, my cousin Mackenzie Leo. So Mackenzie is a junior in high school as of right now, and as an impressionable 17-year-old young woman, her story of struggling with anxiety is a prime example of a mentally affected youth and reluctance to seek treatment due to stigma and undereducation on mental health. I asked Mackenzie if she would like to be interviewed, but she opted out of showing her face and voice and requested that I just message her the questions. So the first question I asked was, when did you first realize you had a mental health condition? And her response was, when I was 10, I started to notice that I was having bad anxiety, that my family members were going to die because of something I did wrong, or I would just dwell on the smallest things, but they were like extreme life-altering events to me. So the next question that I asked was, did you want to reach out for help at such a young age? And she followed up with, no, because I didn't even know what those feelings were, since nobody really exposed me to mental health information until middle school, which was already 2 years after I started feeling extreme anxiety. The third question I asked her said, did you eventually reach out for help? And she responded, not personally, but my mom noticed that it was getting bad around last year when I was a sophomore in high school. It was my first real time taking midterms and finals and being in a real high school since my first year was online. So it was extremely hard for me. She approached me, and I eventually had a mental breakdown and spilled everything on her. The next day, she contacted my doctor, and I was at an appointment and diagnosed with 10 milligrams of Lexapro within 24 hours. I meet with a therapist once a week now. So my fourth and final question I asked Mackenzie was, do you feel like this type of intervention helped you at all? Did you feel any sort of stigma towards yourself for feeling that way? And her last response was, I feel like therapy in combination with medication helped me a lot. I am much more relaxed and easygoing, and it's very nice to have someone to talk to once a week and be able to let all of my feelings out. I'm in the process of weaning off the medication, so I picked up hobbies like going on walks and meditating to try and calm myself down in times of high stress, and I really feel like they've had some beneficial impact on my mental well-being, honestly. I did feel sort of out of place when my friends would talk about their days, and it would be on the days that I had therapy, but my therapist is in the process of working with me on that. So, there you have it, folks. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Remember to always reach out and encourage others to do the same if you are struggling or if you see anybody else struggling, and advocate not only for yourself, but for all of those who can't do it on their own. Mental health matters in every nation, in every city, and in every young teenager who is afraid of judgment. Thank you.